Thank you for the introduction, and thank you very much for the opportunity to be here and to come and share some thoughts with you regarding biofertilizers. So the topic is biofertilizers, an overview and relevance. The presentation will have a short overview on what is biofertilizers, how they are defined and how they work, and also their relevance. Why are we as industry having a lot of resources committed to developing biofertilizers and then making them commercially available to the end user? But first, kindly permit me the opportunity to really acknowledge the speakers that presented here yesterday, again today. This morning was a very informative presentation. It just reminded me again about how the soil organisms have an effect on the environment, and the environment again on the soil organisms, and all this interaction. And it's really important for us to keep this in mind and try to see the bigger picture. So yes, thank you to all the previous presentations as well. Then the contents of my presentation will include a short overview on biological products in general, as well as the bioindustry at this stage, especially from a global point of view. Then I will proceed with a more focused look at biofertilizers with some definitions, some types that you can fit into these definitions, as well as benefits and disadvantages. And then also a few aspects to consider regarding the development of a biofertilizer, and a few final thoughts to take home. But first, maybe let's get some perspective. We all have seen all the data and the facts that's been presented on the world population and the growing pressure on food security. So the global population is set to grow to 9 billion people by 2050 and 11 billion before the close of this century. So the challenge is an estimated 11 billion people will need to eat 33 billion meals a day. And then an estimated 500 million farmers globally who will need to face this challenge and provide the food required. So this is quite a challenge, and there's a lot of different answers, different ideas, different solutions that's being generated on how do we face this challenge. One of these possible solutions is the integration of biosolutions with conventional practice. And this may have some benefits, including supporting sustainable agricultural practices, improving grower economics, and then meeting food chain requirements. It's possible. Whatever the case may be, whatever the best solutions are in the future, the game has already changed, and we need to go beyond. We need to think about the new solutions and broaden our horizons on how to face the challenges that's on our way. In the short intro to biological products, I will touch on a few aspects on what is a biological product, what's included there, and then why are they relevant and why are we actually considering them in general. Biological products contain active ingredients, usually from a natural source. This can include living organisms, for example, bacteria. There's the picture is not very clear on the screen, but it's a nitrogen-fixing bacteria. Then there's also the fungi and the viruses. Viruses are mainly used as biocontrol agents, but you also have your macrobials, your insects and mites also used as biocontrol agents and being more and more protected in many farming systems. Then you've got your non-living substances as well that can act as active ingredients, and this can include metabolites, plant extracts, and other biochemicals. These types of products can serve a multitude of functions for biocontrol, biostimulants, and biofertilizers, and then many of these products can actually incorporate all these functions in one product or one package. And this is especially true with your microorganisms. The slide here gives an overall scope of the realm of the biological product industry. There's really a lot of different types of products, different types of functions, active ingredients, different formulations with which to work with. On the most Left-hand side, you will see your biofertilizers here being incorporated into microbial section as defined in many different definitions, but we'll still get to that a bit later on. And these microbials can really have a vast range of modes of action in order to function as a biofertilizer. Then you've got your biostimulants, that's very important for abiotic stress relief products. And this can include non-living active ingredients, your amino acids, seaweed extracts, organic acids, and so forth, but also your microbials again. And then on the other side of the spectrum, we've got your biological products, that includes biochemicals, microbials, macrobials. So really, it's a vast range of very different types of products, very different types of technologies, modes of actions, and it's very good on the one side, but it's also challenging from the other side, especially from a regulatory point of view. Of course, there's a lot of aspects that needs to be considered in the differences between your biological products and your conventional chemistry. For example, biological products will mostly be from a natural origin with a lower toxicological profile. However, yes, that is true, but in some cases, some biological products may have a higher risk profile compared to others. It can occur. Then biological products has few residue concerns, a big benefit, and also usually lower environmental impact compared to chemistry. Luckily for us, the technology has progressed far in terms of various types of formulations and application methods available to use your biological products. In many cases, biological products has a slower efficacy action time. It takes a bit longer to achieve its full efficacy compared to many chemical options. And it's still a very growing portfolio, but it's growing at a rapid rate, with estimates that the biological industry is actually growing much quicker than any other input parameter. It's a fact that it's fairly new from a regulatory point of view, so it's a global phenomenon that biological products are undergoing much discussions, much debate, and much development in terms of fitting these products into legal frameworks. From the chemical side, it's mostly synthetic active ingredients, mostly higher toxicological risk profiles compared to your biologicals. There is stricter residue control. We all are aware of the number of chemicals that's being banned, or the residues that's becoming much more stricter, that's pushing pressure on not only end users but also industry to change their ways of thinking. Most chemicals will have a high environmental impact profile compared to biologicals. From my personal point of view, I think chemical products really has a wide variety of types of formulations and application methods, maybe even better than biologicals at this stage. Chemicals usually have a quick efficacy action time, especially in emergency cases where you need a knockdown effect. And it's got a well-established product portfolio compared to biologicals, as well as a well-established regulatory framework. Usually when you want to register your conventional chemical product, you have quite a clear indication of what data requirements you need and what you don't. And you even have the option of maybe a type of generic registrations in many countries. There are various factors that's driving the biological industry and the products that it presents. Firstly, there's reduced residues by regulatory authorities globally and specialized market entities. Again, there's a lot of pressure on industry to come with new ideas due to the banning or strict residue rules regarding certain chemicals. And then even you've got your supermarkets, especially in the European Union, where they will even have more stricter residue rules than the local regulatory authority. So that's definitely a driving focus for the biological industry. And there's increasing consumer demand for food with reduced reliance on chemical use. And I think it fits in well with the conscience from the consumer, as well as the adverse effects that misuse of chemicals can have on the environment as well. Biologicals, as mentioned, can have lower risk profiles to humans and the environment. And then biological products has come a long way over the past few years with improved formulations, shelf life, and efficacy. And then also the companies are really bringing up-to-date technical support in most cases to support those products, support the end user in applying these products correctly and appropriately. From economic points of view, the global net worth of biological products are estimated to reach just over $11 billion by 2022. So that's just around the corner. And this basically covers the whole biosolution spectrum. If you look at biofertilizers, it's estimated that the industry will grow globally to just under $5 billion by 2025. And that compound annual growth rate of the biofertilizer industry is estimated at 12.9% between 2017 and 2025. This is actually a few important points to consider, because it would seem that there's money to be made, and industry needs to make money. It's a reality. So there is a reason to start and invest in biologicals and start to change mindsets. With a bit of a spectrum on the challenges that we are facing, as well as the bioproduct industry as a whole, we can now focus a bit on biofertilizers, how they are defined, the types you may get, as well as some aspects regarding their characteristics. I know that this slide is extremely populated. It just goes to show that there is a lot of definitions out there on what is a biofertilizer, whether it's local regulatory authorities, countries, organizations, literature. There are literally dozens of different variations on what is a biofertilizer. For example, a European definition that's being discussed and worked on is that biofertilizers are defined as a component in the biostimulant definition. That would mean that it's any substance or microorganism in a form in which it is applied to the user, applied to plants, seeds, or the root environment with the intention to stimulate natural processes of plants, benefiting nutrient use efficiency, tolerance to abiotic stress, and crop quality. So that's quite a mouthful. That's a big definition. But there's a few very interesting aspects coming out of that definition. And that's firstly, they say any substance. So it can be non-living active ingredients or microorganisms. They also talk about stimulating natural processes, benefiting any nutrient deficiencies. There's the mentioning of abiotic stress and crop quality. Let's maybe compare that to the US definition. The US defines it more or less as substances comprising living microbes which, when applied to seed, plant, and soil, stimulate growth by supply of essential nutrients such as nitrogen, phosphorus, and other minerals. And then they also include inoculants, your symbiotic inoculants, into this definition. So there's a distinction there that the US only identifies microorganisms as biofertilizers. But there's still the thing about nutrients and providing nutrients in a way that's acceptable to plants. Then you are all surely familiar with the South African definition as part of our group 3s, where plant biostimulant, plant growth enhancer, plant strengthener are placed together as any substance or organism or combination thereof which is applied to seed, plant, or root environment, capable of modifying and improving plant development through a collection of different mechanisms of action. Again, here, there's some similarities with the European definition in that it can be any substance, but there's, again, the whole thing about plant development and a wide variety of application methods and a wide variety of mechanisms of action. In other types of definitions, included here is India. What is interesting is that India is one of the few countries that have already placed their biofertilizer definition into their legal framework. They define it as a product containing carrier-based, solid or liquid, living microorganisms which are agriculturally useful in terms of nitrogen fixation, phosphorus soluble of the soil and or crop. I have to admit, I kind of like this definition. I think it's short, sweet, and basically to the point. I do admit it only contains microorganisms, they're only identified, but yes, there's also a nutrient component and then productivity of your crop and soil. Then there's various organizations that has their own definitions on what is a biofertilizer. The South African Bioproducts Organization, or SABO, includes biofertilizers also as a component of the biostimulant definition. It's actually quite similar to the European definition in that there's no distinction between types of active ingredients that you could use. They only refer to products, and it also stimulates natural processes. It focuses on nutrients, tolerance to abiotic stress, crop quality, vigor, and yield. And then you've got the European Biomass Industry Association. They also focus on, in this case, on microorganisms with living cells and latent cells from efficient strains of microorganisms that help crop plants' uptake of nutrients. So again here, there's focus on the nutrients. In literature, there's even more types of definitions, with researchers battling and struggling and debating on how to precisely define a biofertilizer. The first one there is one that we know already. The biofertilizers are substances which contain living microorganisms, which when applied to seed, plant surfaces or soil, colonize the rhizosphere or the interior of the plant and promote growth by increasing the supply or availability of primary nutrients to the host plant. Then you get the second definition, which says that biostimulants are materials other than fertilizers that promote plant growth when applied in low quantities. This seems to generate a bit of a conundrum if you have a biostimulant definition that incorporates your biofertilizer definition, in that this states that biostimulants are materials other than fertilizers. But then you get to the third definition that says the rationale for adopting the term biofertilizer is that it derives from biological fertilizer that in turn implies the use of living organisms. So here we've got again that, yes, it is biofertilizer, is a fertilizer, but it's living and it's living organisms. In conclusion, there's a huge variety of definitions and ways to describe a biofertilizer. That brings us to, how do you focus your biofertilizer? The focus will be dependent on the definition you are using. In some cases, you are permitted to include a non-living substance into your biofertilizer definition, while in others, they only recognize microorganisms. But, whatever the case may be, the focus is on the improvement of plant development through growth, yield, nutrient uptake and or nutrient availability or provision, the alleviation of abiotic stress, improving soil conditions for plant development, and substituting or enhancing conventional fertilizer application and or practice. I think especially the last point that's coming from the literature and from various organizations is that, yes, biofertilizers can be used as part of organic systems, it's very true, but it can also be used to substitute or enhance your conventional fertilizer application. If we refer to the definitions that were listed previously and what regulatory authorities and organizations and countries around the world are stating, and as well as the literature, you can have a multitude of substances or organisms that can be described as biofertilizers. For example, if you look at non-living substances, it may include plant extracts, seaweed, and kelp. These products may contain plant nutrients as well, or other synthetic substances within the formulation. You can also have some biochemical-related compounds, for example, polysaccharides, natural hormones, humic, fulvic, and amino acids, protein hydrolysates, metabolites isolated from microbes. So in cases where you don't have a living microorganism, you are only using the metabolites that they produce during the fermentation process. Again, these products can also be included with other plant nutrients and synthetic substances within the formulation. It would seem that products like these, where you include these different parts of formulants and ingredients, you get almost a biostimulant effect from your plant extract or seaweed or whatever. And then there's also a type of fertilizer plant nutrient component all within the same product. In some cases, it would seem that the fertilizer component nutrients are supplying the metabolic processes that the biostimulation is inducing. So could be possible. Then, if we look at the living microorganisms, there's a multitude of bacteria and fungi that can perform functions under different definitions of biofertilizers. For example, we've got bacillus species, Azoospermillum, which is a very good example of a free-living nitrogen-fixing bacteria. Included there, just in this example, is Bradyrhizobium, Mesorhizobium, two symbiotic nitrogen-fixing bacteria, and then Pseudomonas, a good example of a nutrient-solubilizing bacteria. You will note that I placed an asterisk after the two symbiotic legume inoculants there. The reason for this being, yes, it's true that globally, in literature, under other regulatory authorities and so forth, legume inoculants are included as biofertilizers or defined as biofertilizers. However, in South Africa, you cannot at this stage register these types of bacteria as biofertilizers. They need to be registered as remedies. The reason being that the definition for legume inoculants are placed in the legal framework of agricultural remedies. So, but hopefully in future, there will be an opportunity to register these types of bacteria as biofertilizers. In terms of fungi, there was a lot of discussions now on mycorrhizal fungi and also some on non-mycorrhizal fungi. Very good examples of organisms that's currently being used and further developed as biofertilizers. Of course, with any type of product, you have some benefits and you have some disadvantages. And it's the same with biofertilizers. Benefits, reduced environmental impact and toxicological profiles compared to many other types of products. That correlates well with biological products in general. Then biofertilizers can be applied as part of organic or conventional farming systems. You do not need to differentiate between the two. These products can be positioned into both types of systems. Depending on the product and crop, there's various types of applications, application methods and application equipment that can be used to apply your biofertilizer. This makes them rather practical. If you look at microorganisms, these are living factories in a formulation and will continue to generate functions after your application. It's especially if you consider a liquid formulation where your microorganism is utilizing the nutrients within the formulation, it's metabolizing, it's excreting the metabolites that's necessary. That's actually the mode of action when you apply it. So when you apply such a type of product, you may get a relatively quick response because the metabolite is already in the formulation, and then the microorganism will, over a certain period of time, still be able to propagate, still be able to generate the metabolites, and then hopefully for a period of time be able to induce your commercial efficacy level that you require from your product. The disadvantages, however, is that it can be quite challenging to apply your biofertilizer correctly, especially in some conventional examples. If you use microorganisms as an example, you need to be aware of the type of chemistry that's included in your application programs. That's why it's very important to test the viability of your chemicals with your biological products beforehand and determine the viability and what can work together, what cannot work together, and if the two cannot be complemented with each other, what then? What can we do then? Some biofertilizers may also have to or require increased follow-up applications. due to shorter efficacy periods that they work or keep a commercially viable efficacy level. And then environmental conditions can affect your biofertilizer in certain cases, especially climatic, soil pH, disease pressures, and so on, depending on the type of fertilizer you are using, if you are using living microorganisms, or is it a plant extract, or is it just nutrients. There's a lot of things to consider. And then yes, biofertilizers can be challenging from a regulatory point of view because they are relatively new in that sphere. And you saw all the different types of definitions there is out there. And it's rather difficult to regulate something that's difficult to define. Due to microorganisms being so important in biofertilizer, it's probably a good idea to just have a few comments on microorganisms. Inoculating plants with beneficial microorganisms can be traced back to the 20th century. Actually, the use of microorganisms can be traced to much earlier. It's just that in the early 20th century, the first rhizobium product was patented. The use of rhizobium species has been conducted for the past century with no use to humans or the environment. Microorganisms then generally have a multitude of modes of action. They can have both plant stimulating and biocontrol effects. That's a reality. You cannot go to your microbial active ingredient in your product and tell it, listen now, you only focus on the plant growth side. Don't suppress that pathogen, please. It doesn't work that way. It will do what it does in nature. So this is living creatures. It's got its own genetic makeup. It's got its own personality. Many microbes will have their own personality, and this can differ very between strains. This is basically the best way to try and manage what your microbe does in your product is through strain selection. You need to determine what's the function of your product, what do you want your product to do, where are you going to position your product. Then you can start selecting the correct strain with which to develop your product. Do you want plant growth stimulation to excel on certain crops? Do you want biocontrol, or maybe biocontrol on specific pathogens or a complex of pathogens? Do you want a jack of all trades, but then you are losing some of the excellence in terms of other parameters? So it really depends on the strain, and that's why it's a lot of work. It takes a lot of resources to get the correct strain for the product you want to develop and you want to position into the market. Then something to consider is that not all microorganisms can be considered as safe. There are some of them that has induced pathogenicity of specific strains in sensitive or immune implicated populations. This, I think, is rather important, especially from a South African point of view. How do we develop a biofertilizer? Where do we begin? Where's the starting point? A starting point could be maybe to look at your active ingredients. Really know them. What are they? Are they living organisms? Are they plant extracts? Are they amino acids? What are your active ingredient? And then determine the claims that you can make and that you want to make, and determine where do you want to position your product and your claims. And then be informed of all technical related aspects of your product. It will definitely make life so much easier if one has all the technical information available and how this product works, how to apply it, when to apply it, and also know the limits of the product. Refer to the Group 3 fertilizer guidelines as published by DAF for data requirements on registering a biofertilizer in South Africa. From this document, it would seem that 3 points get highlighted. That would be quality of a product, efficacy of a product, and in some cases, the safety of a product. So if it's possible to answer these 3 aspects, it will be a bit easier to develop a biofertilizer. In this triangle, called a development triangle, it's much similar to what we know as a disease triangle, but this is from a development side. It could be a good way to start off the development. First with your active ingredients at one end, your mode of action at the other, and then your claims. It's very important to know each of these points very well and make sure that these 3 points, the active ingredients, the mode of action, and the claims you're planning to make, that these correlate with each other and integrate and actually speak to each other. In the end then, it will definitely make the development process much easier. Of course, absolutely, there's a lot of other aspects that you need to keep in mind, from your formulation quality, efficacy trials, how many on what crops. There's a huge array of aspects to keep in mind, but basically getting everything on these 3 points will definitely work well. Then some final thoughts on biofertilizers, and something to take home today and maybe go think about is that biofertilizers are of great importance to South African agriculture. That's a fact. It keeps South African agriculture competitive in an international arena. We are definitely an international player in agriculture. We as South Africa, we've also got some of the best farmers in the world that's producing some really, really good crops and yields. We've got very big export markets, especially to the US, the EU, and the East as well. So we need to maintain our international competitiveness if we are to build not only our economy, but also our sustainability as a country. Biofertilizers provides new tools and solutions to future challenges, and then biofertilizers, as well with other biosolutions or bioproducts, may raise growth potential of industry, thereby stimulating economy and job creation. Many companies or many industry stakeholders has identified biological products as a way to increase your growth and increase your GP on your sales at the end of the day. And when you increase your growth as a company, you can increase your job creation and thereby stimulate the economy. Maybe bioproducts is a way to assist you in that. Then something to keep in mind is that there should be a balance between appropriate regulatory requirements and cost of development of biofertilizers. It's important for industry to benefit from a sufficient return of investment to invest in the high costs of product development. We all know the costs to develop a product in South Africa. A biological remedy can go up to an average of 1.5 million rand easily. Now, it's absolutely that a biofertilizer will be cheaper to develop than a bioremedy, that's true, but still, it could easily reach 1 million rand. It's possible. So we need to get a balance between what regulatory development is appropriate and in accordance with the return of investment. Then once implemented, it's important to keep registration data requirements stable. If you start off your development with a certain set of rules and you end it with that certain set of rules, then it's great for everybody and it makes life so much easier. And then South Africa must maintain access to the latest technology. In the international arena, the international technology, especially in the biological products, is going forward at an enormous rate, especially in South America, in Europe, even the USA, and many countries in the East as well. It's important to always have access to that technology and provide that access to our farmers. However, it's also very important to stimulate our own local technology and development. We have so much resources in South Africa, so much potential with regard to different types of biofertilizers. We need to stimulate that development as well. And then I would like to end off with an idea. We all know the challenges. We know how hard it is out there to compete, to endure. In terms of meeting these challenges, facing them, and getting the answers, we need to open up to new ideas, new ways, new answers. Only then can we ensure the sustainability not only of our own industries, but also about of our end user, and also the sustainability of our food security. Thank you very much.